Good afternoon, everybody. You are most welcome to this Reflect event. It is going to be an exciting hour and a half, and it's really wonderful to see everybody with us here in Futures Place. We are reaching you live from Futures Place in Stevenage, the IET's HQ. It's also wonderful to be able to welcome everybody online. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon as we delve into the world of EDI for organizations. I'm very excited about today. I am Yewande Akionla, and I'm joined by some inspirational people who are so intentional about the work that they do in the EDI space. I'm a black woman. I'm wearing a black pair of trousers and a white and black top this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. I'm an engineer and an innovator, and really, I guess, why this is so important to me today is I see the need for progressive work in my everyday life, and to be able to be joined by people who are doing that work on a daily basis and being super intentional about it is just amazing. The next hour and a half is going to be stimulating, it's going to be inspiring. We've got a great panel here today, panelists and friends. They're friends to me. They're panelists and friends. We're also going to hear from the IET's Young Woman Engineer of the Year, Amma Frimpong, as well. And you will have the opportunity to ask questions. There's a QR code. Hopefully you can see that up now. And if you are watching via YouTube, you are able to participate. Please send those questions in. There's going to be lots of different discussions and topics, so please feel free to engage on all of the questions, engage in all of the topics discussed today. And so it brings me to welcoming you, as I said, friends and panelists. When I saw the lineup, I just thought, wow, it can't get any better than this, because you are all doing very intentional work, really around making our world a fairer place. And so I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, but then I feel like I need to show the world that you're my friends by introducing you and your names. Simon, it's great for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Isabella, it's so great that you're joining us as well. Nike, it's great that you're here. And Hillary, thank you so much for joining us as well. Simon, I'll start with you.
Okay. Of course, no problem. So I'm Simon Timmis. I'm head of communications, brand and digital here at the IET. I guess for me, my passion for EDI comes from generally, just like many people, wanting to make society a slightly better place through in any small way that I can. And better than perhaps the world I was born into. I'm aware that the world I'm born into was one that probably gave quite a lot of waiting and opportunity and privilege to people like me, and I think it's important for me to do what I can through my work to kind of change that in a small way for the future. I've got two young daughters, Clara and Audrey. They are quite young, but they are into STEM, which is good. That's the most important thing. But I guess, for them, I see the way that they see the world at the moment is one full of opportunity. There's nothing which isn't open to them. Any experience or job is something which they can pursue if they want to. And I guess, I know for many young people in the UK, that isn't always the experience. It isn't perhaps how they get to experience the world. And so I guess it's important for me, in just a small way that I can through my work here at the IET, to do something to change that for some other young people. So yeah, that's what I'm all about.
Thank you very much, Simon. Isabella.
Got to follow that. So yeah, I'm Isabella Mascarenhas. Everyone just calls me Iz because I realise that's quite a mouthful. I'm lucky to work at RS. I have a wonderful team there, and we do youth outreach. So we work with universities all over the world, and we are really all about helping young engineers to develop critical skills that they don't get taught at university, helping them to bridge that gap between academia and the workplace. And a huge part of that is helping to diversify the talent pipeline into engineering and technology. It's such a rich and diverse and impactful profession. We need more young ladies and more ethnically diverse young people and all forms of diversity in the profession. And that is of the utmost importance because, let's face it, we're creating products, services, solutions that are supposed to serve society at large. How can you do that and make those products as inclusive as possible if you don't have those people around the table in the design, in the user testing? So yeah, that is why we care about this greatly. And on a personal level, I'm an Indian woman wearing a very green suit. My husband is Black Jamaican. I have mixed race children. I grew up in Zambia, so I'm just all around a bit confusing for people. But yeah, so that is why I have a real affiliation, particularly with ethnic diversity.
Lovely, thank you so much. Nika. Hi. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could introduce yourself. Yes.
Okay, so I'm Nika Folayan. I am an engineer by day and an engineer by night, I always say. I'm a technical director at an organisation called WSP, which is an engineering consultancy, one of the largest in the UK. But I'm co-founder and co-chair of the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, which I co-founded alongside my brother, Dr. Ollie Folayan, back in 2007, and we've been going since then. I'm really passionate about diversity and inclusion because I think that we are better innovators when we're diverse and inclusive, and I've been championing this for many, many, many years. So I think I'll stop there.
Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Hi, Hilary.
Hi, yes, so I'm Hilary Levers. I'm the CEO of Engineering UK. Engineering UK is dedicated to trying to bring more young people from all backgrounds into engineering and tech careers. So we have that aspiration around diversity embedded in what we're trying to achieve. And actually, it's what really attracted me to the organisation. I was very aware of the challenges there are to increase the diversity of that workforce, and I also knew it was a very hard problem to solve, and both the importance, but actually kind of the trickiness, the amount of, you talked about intention, the amount of intention it would take to make that difference, I actually kind of found quite attractive at the same time. It's finding it quite frustrating how hard it is to get the traction that we really need. I think it is so important for all the reasons that the panel has expressed. And I would add on the way in which engineers are problem solvers. And I think it has to be a concern if the people who are deciding which of the problems that get prioritized aren't representative of wider society. So as well as having the greater potential for innovative solutions, I think it is also, but what are the things that we really care about? What are the problems that we're actually going to try and solve? And I think having everybody's voice heard well in that decision making is really important. I think this has always been an area of interest to me. I'm happy to blame my mother, celebrate my mother, who was, very serious about developing her career, and probably conveyed some aspirations to us very young, I think best characterised by the fact that in 1977, for the Queen's Jubilee, when I was just 7, she dressed me up in Union Jacks, but with a little placard that said Union Jill, votes for women, which I'm not quite sure why the votes for women was coming in 1977, but I was just like, I was out there being a feminist before I really had a say, and actually have expanded those interests across all of diversity.
Oh, I love that. Oh, fantastic. It's been really nice, actually, to hear your passion, because I think it's the work that you do is fueled by that passion, and the fact that it's come from something that is so close to your heart. It's like your kids, the work that you do on a global scale, the work that you do for engineers all across the world, and you bridging the gap and ensuring that young people see themselves in a profession that they might not otherwise see themselves. It's pretty amazing. Here at the IET, I say we because I'm a fellow of the IET, so I think I can own that. We are very, intentional and passionate about ensuring that we can shape the transformation that the industry needs to see. And one of the things that we use as a mechanism for making that happen is the Young Woman Engineer Awards, which have been running for 45 years now, thereabouts, a long time. And in fact, we are going to watch, just after this, a video that highlights the YWE from the last year especially. So actually our audience, enjoy.
And a very warm welcome to the IET's 2022 Young Woman Engineer of the Year Awards.
Now this award is given to an exceptional woman, a pioneer, a leader, and an inspiration to all. Amma from Park.
So where are you on your journey? Are you just starting out? Are you near the end, looking back at a very modestly successful career? I need you to engage with your younger self and just do one thing. Take the next step.
I learnt a quote very recently, and it said, if you can't see what you want to be, just be it. And it resonates so much because sometimes we say representation matters. Sometimes there's no one to look to. And if you can't find that person, just be it. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Amma is hugely inspirational. And the YWE, as we refer to it, but the Young Woman Engineer of the Year Awards is something I look forward to every single year. Literally, I'm like, when the date is announced, it's right there in my diary and has been actually for a number of years now. So absolutely amazing. We caught up with Amma Frimpong really just to hear some of the work that she's doing in the EDI space, and really to also get a sense of why she does what she does, as well as some of the projects that she's working on.
I think it's important to celebrate and showcase diversity in STEM because technology and innovation is made possible by the diverse minds that are behind it. The technology is also used by a diverse range of people. And so if we want to be able to continue to create technology and innovation that is fit for purpose for everybody and all the people around the globe, we need to have more people at the table, different perspectives, creating these. And to be able to get young people in so that they become the change and the force of nature that is creating these new technologies, we need to show them the existing diversity that is in technology and show them where they can make an impact. I'm working on a project to improve diversity in STEM. What we've done is we've created a foundation called the Invent Foundation. The Invent Foundation's aim is to equip the next generation of inventors, creators, and innovators by providing free programs that allow them to experience STEM from a very early age. We'll be creating programs for 3D technology skills in the first instance, where they get to practice modeling, 3D printing, animation, graphic design, virtual reality, to show them the things that STEM and STEAM can do in their future careers. That way, we can start to open up the pool for the young people that are starting their journeys in STEM, and we want to be able to do this quite early. My top tip to organizations for attracting talent would be to review their recruitment processes. Look at what the wording and the language you're using in your job ad is. Is it speaking to the right people? Is it attracting the right range of people that you want to recruit? And then look at where and how you're dissipating that job ad. Is it going through just the usual channels that will only reach the same people, or are you spreading it far and wide so that you can get a range of people? My next tip for organizations would be for retaining talent. What are you doing internally? Are you hiding behind legalities to not talk about the lack of diversity you have in your organization? Don't be. If you don't know where the problem is, you won't be able to solve it. So start talking about it and making sure that you're instituting policies to address where your gaps and weaknesses are. My final tip to organizations would be for top management to please listen and care. Listen to your staff, listen to what they're saying. Recognize that different people are different. Diversity is multifaceted, and that the requirements and the needs of the people will be very different depending on who they are and what they need. Think about age, socioeconomic background, parenting status, gender, race, religion. All of these people would have different needs, and you need to be able to understand and hear them. Finally, if you can, please have a diversity team or a person who is in charge of diversity, whose sole role is to champion equality, diversity, and inclusion.
Fantastic. Just great to hear that. She was very clear about the things that she thinks are great mechanisms. Before I come to our panel, I'm going to improve our visual awareness and describe our panelists to a bit greater detail. So Simon is wearing a pair of brown shoes, a pair of olive trousers, yes, and a navy blue jacket. And Isabella is wearing a beautiful green suit and a pair of super shiny slippers, which look fantastic. Sandals, I should say, actually. Anika is wearing, is that polka dots? Yeah, exactly, black and white polka dots dress. I'm wearing a black pair of shoes, and Hillary is wearing a black pair of trousers like myself and a multicolored, I can see purple and turquoise as well. How about that, teal? Thank you so much. So we've heard what Amma is doing in terms of intentional steps and some of the things as well that she would recommend for organizations to do as part of their intentional work in the diversity and inclusion space. Simon, what are those things, what inspires you to do what you do, and what are the things that you are doing personally in your day-to-day as part of your work or even outside of work that you feel help in terms of contributions to making our world a fairer place?
Yeah, of course. I think actually, it was mentioned just there, one of the biggest things is actually consciously trying to spend more time listening than talking. There used to be, which is not necessarily that easy for me, it can be challenging. There used to be a lady who worked at the IET, and she used to say, I've got 2 of these and 1 of these, and I like to use them in proportion. And I have, I've tried to, where I can, particularly in meetings, in workshops, in kind of creative sessions, adopt that a bit more, and particularly make the effort to listen to people whose perhaps backgrounds might be different to mine or have a different perspective. I think one of the really tangible things which I have tried to do, particularly in the last year or so, is, in the nature of the work that I do, there's lots of kind of creative sessions. You're circling around a problem or a concept, and it's really, as a more senior leader, generally people just want to know what you think. It goes straight to you. And actually, just by making sure that you always go last in those conversations, because otherwise, if you put your view first forward, it can be quite hard for somebody else, perhaps more junior or perhaps a bit less confident, to make their view known. So that's worked out really well. And funnily enough, at least half of the time, I'd say, I've changed my mind by the time it comes to me now, because I've heard that people have had really interesting perspectives which I wouldn't have thought of. So the things like that. I guess the other one which I'm working on is trying to sort of commit to being a bit more continuous about EDI work and things that we do. So it's, every time we have a successful workshop or something like this, that day, book the next one in, because we'll book the next one, let's plan the next one, because otherwise I feel you can lose that momentum sometimes. And then probably the last one I'd share, which has actually had quite a tangible difference for some of our work that I've been doing, is to really, and it sounds easy, but actually to really embed inclusive thinking right early on in those campaigns. So, some of the campaigns we've done, that's had a real tangible outcome. So, I'll give you an example. As the IET, we have various buildings around the world, our main one being Savoy Place in London. And about 10 years ago, we ran a campaign to ask engineers and people, who should we profile in our building? Who should we name the rooms after? Who should we showcase? Whose pictures should we have hanging down the stairwells? And when we done that campaign 10 years ago, we got lots of names, but they were probably 90% men, very little diversity in there. And so when we ran that campaign last year, we just took the time, me and my team, to really think, okay, well, how can we make this nomination process as easy as possible? How can we make multiple ways, perhaps for somebody who identifies as neurodiverse, to make it easy for them to do so? And really then just spending the time thinking, well, how can we make sure that this campaign reaches those hard-to-reach, more marginalised audiences? So how can we link up with LGBTQ+ in STEM groups and other things, just to make sure that those people had a chance to put their role models forward. And the outcome of that was astounding. Just by doing those simple steps, 400 odd entries from a huge range of diversity, a huge range of different characteristics, backgrounds, geographic locations, ethnicities, parts of engineering and STEM. So I guess that one really sticks in my head, because it just showed, really, by making some quite simple changes in how we executed that sort of campaign, the outcome was there to see.
Amazing. Lots of courage as well. Lots of courage in that, to be able to say, actually, we're not just going to go with the first lot that come through because we've got a program that we need to work to, but actually we're going to extend it out and make sure that something else is the outcome that we go with as well. So, fantastic. Isabella, I was just really wanting to actually speak about your personal approach to EDI. And this is because I know you. I see, and hear your voice on LinkedIn, on social media. And I think, it really takes clarity, it takes intention as well to be able to bring yourself to the conversation and live what you preach. So I wondered if you could share with the audience what those things are that you see as important to you, especially, powered by your passion, and what you're doing personally to be able to progress and make our world a fairer place. And I would like to then come to what you're doing with RS Components.
Okay. So I think I picked up on something in there that's really important to me, and that is authenticity. Particularly when you're a senior leader, I think people need to see that you're just human, right? You feel the same things that other people feel, you experience the same things that other people feel, and there's nothing wrong with people knowing that and seeing that. And I think that's a really important part of being an authentic leader and person. And I think, I don't know if everyone's familiar with, there's a phenomenal young man called George the Poet, and he actually hosted the youth event of Reflect last year. And he's got a beautiful poem. I would encourage you to look it up on YouTube if you can. And there's a line in it, he did it for the Prince's Trust, and there's a line in it that ends the poem, and it just says that there are 8 billion people in the world, but there's only one you. And so everybody, no matter whether you think it's important or not, everybody has some value or some perspective that they can bring to the table that somebody else might not have. And so I love what you said about listening, right? And that's another really important thing, is listening and acknowledging that we're all on a learning journey. None of us know it all. I'm constantly learning, and being open to that. There is nothing wrong with acknowledging that you don't know everything. Nobody does. So yeah, listening and intentionally seeking out people with different experiences to you, different stories to you, different backgrounds to you, helps you to expand that understanding of other people. And a lot of the time, exclusive behaviours, whether intentional or unintentional, come from a fear, right? A fear of people that you might not understand much about them. And what's the way to dispel that? Just get to know them, listen to them, talk to them, understand their experiences. Yeah, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but that's where the growth happens.
I love that. Sometimes it's uncomfortable,
It
but that's where and when the growth happens. And so we need to also measure the growth by how uncomfortable sometimes, you know, it has to be, we have to be able to actually see the growth happening. Amazing, thank you. Nike, I know why you started and co-founded AFBE, but I just wondered if you could share that, because I think it came from a personal place, especially as you co-founded AFBE with your brother.
Yes, absolutely. So back in 2007, there was a lot going on in London. Firstly, there was a lot of gang culture and gang culture in London, and that was in the news constantly, like it is today, but it was more so in the news than it was. And then at the same time, the Royal Academy of Engineering had done a lot of kind of research around the numbers of ethnic minority people that they could use to spread the message of engineering, and had found that, you know, there are not enough role models. Outside of that, I was in an office I was in a very hostile environment in my workplace, being the only black female in a floor of about 100 people, feeling really isolated and being othered on a daily basis, and wanting to think that it was something that I was doing wrong and nothing to do with anything else. And then seeing my brother in his office going through the same kind of situations, but in many cases worse, as a black man, and not wanting to say that it was because of our ethnicity. And then, what happened then, after all of that happening around, was the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, there was an article of him saying, like, black culture was kind of responsible for crime, and I still have the article. And I remember thinking, and now I have to go to work on Monday. They already think I'm a bit weird, and now my whole culture is responsible for crime. And myself and Ollie used to joke that maybe we should have been gangsters, because that's our culture, right? We're in the wrong profession. And that's what kind of led us to start looking at who at the top we could talk to about our experiences at the top of organizations, and we couldn't find anyone that looked like us that we could kind of really talk to. And we thought, let's come together and let's, one, start to change the stereotype of how people see our community. Two, start to engage young people in the fact that, you know, not everyone's going to be a Jay-Z or a Tiny Temper at the time. You probably, you know, want a profession that can, you know, help your family and support your needs, and engineering is something for you. And so we wrote an email out to our contacts, and then, you know, everyone was like, yeah, you know, this is a good idea. First meeting, turn up, there's myself, Ollie, 3 other people. And at that point, you kind of think, should we give up? You know, everyone seems interested, but no one wants to put in the work. But because of our drive and our passion, and when we started to see the difference that what we were doing was making, we decided to stay the cause. Now, the organization has 2,500 individual members and up to almost 80 corporations, including the IET, that support the work we do. So small effort in comparison to impact was always important, and we want to continue, AFBE wants to continue to remain a small organization with big impact, and that's what we've been doing for 16 years now.
Amazing, amazing. Such a wonderful example of, you know, taking the right step, putting in the hard work, because it's hard work sometimes, but also working alongside people who are equally as passionate, and all the many allies, hopefully, that have joined AFBE. Amazing. Hilary, I really liked, you know, the story of your mom changing the narrative right there and then. And I wondered, to a certain extent, how that has influenced, I guess, the work that you do, but also how has that influenced some of the things that you do outside of Engineering UK?
Yeah, so I think I felt a bit of an outlier as a woman as I was coming up to education. That was the only otherness that I was really experiencing, but I was the only girl in my physics class, something which many engineers who are women in the room experience. And I just, you know, that was in 1988, and I so remember thinking, gosh, this will be like the last generation this happens to. I really kind of believed we were on a much faster pathway, and it was something that I spoke out about then, and I think I've gone to kind of expand that interest. I did a lot of work with children with learning disabilities and just understanding more about all the various aspects of diversity. They became more and more important to me. And actually, when the role at Engineering UK came up, and I said it was the main attractor, that diversity element of it, I was also in an organisation that I was struggling to get the traction. It's a very big organisation. It's a great organisation, welcome. But it was a very big organisation, and I was really struggling to get the change that I felt was just so obviously needed. And I understand why. It's very hard. And I wasn't in the role in the organisation, but that was my job at all. So, but that moved me across to Engineering UK, and it felt like an enormous relief to be able to actually have as a central part of what we're trying to achieve, and we're there for, you know, all young people. So it's about bringing more of everybody in, including people from the backgrounds that are underrepresented in engineering and tech. But it felt like a huge relief to actually be able to say, right, now we can actually start trying to do stuff. And this is what I was saying, it's very hard. But, you know, all we are on is an organizational journey of testing, trying, improving, iterating. And I would say, if this is a question about personal, that's the same for me. So constantly learning, constantly iterating. It's a relief to say openly, I still have so much more to learn. I don't have to be perfect. The fear thing, I think, is so important for people to recognize that so much of their, when they're uninclusive, it's uncertainty, it's fear, and to kind of embrace it and be brave, take it as a brave act, to be more inclusive, to reach out to people who you don't know about and understand more about them, and also just to be, you know, clear about the learning journeys we're going on, but to take the risk of getting things wrong as well. So don't let the fear of saying the wrong thing or actually trying something that might not go according to plan hold you back. We've just got to keep being kind to each other. We're all on those journeys, and learning and sharing and iterating and supporting.
Amazing. And what really came out from what you've just shared is that sense of purpose, right? Which is a journey that we're all on, really trying to work out what our purpose is and trying to align our purpose to, you know, what we do to be able to get the fulfillment that living our purpose brings, which is just amazing. Engineering UK are right at the heart of changing the landscape in terms of inclusive engineering in this country. And there must be a part of you that goes, gosh, this is the aspiration. It's huge, it's scary. I wondered if you could share a bit of what that massive aspiration is for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and how you perhaps see Engineering UK working with organizations all over the world, actually, to be able to bring about that change in a much quicker and much more efficient way.
We would love to be able to achieve that and to show that that's what we've achieved. So we have it threaded through everything we do now. So we've had an equity, diversity, inclusion strategy for 4 years, which was one of the first things I brought in. And now we have a staff resource against it, but it is threaded through the organization. And I feel like the cultural shift it just magnifies itself. So actually, where there was one person who owned it and had expertise with people who were interested and supportive, but maybe struggled to make the accommodations necessary. And for us, that may well be reducing the reach, so reducing the numbers of young people that we are working with, because it takes that little bit more effort to reach out to the groups who are underrepresented. And actually, I feel like everybody in the organization is now generating those ideas and thinking, oh, but we must make sure. So it isn't something that's centralized now. We still have a central role, but it is really very effectively distributed. And then the sorts of things we do, with all the work that we do in the UK, we think very carefully about our targeting. We've generated a set of criteria that we use based on gender, ethnicity, rurality, special educational needs and disability, and, there's another one, socioeconomic status. And we put ourselves out there. So we created these criteria, and actually we shared them. So other people could critique them and tell us if they thought we hadn't quite got it right, and they could also use them. And that was quite a brave step when we first did that. And we had a lot of discussions, and I'm like, just put them up. And as long as we say, this is what we're doing, we're not saying it's right, and if you think we can do it better, just come and tell us. But actually, we have about 50 organizations who have said, oh, this is really helpful, we'll use that. And so everything that we're doing, we are not saying right, we're saying this is what we're doing, help us do it, share what we're doing, share what you're doing, we can all together. It's really important. So that's about the reach that we have. We use the same approach for how we're evaluating. And we just, last week, had a wonderful week. I'm amazed I can still talk. So
You're allowed to share.
we were at the Big Bang Fair in the NEC in Birmingham, which is the UK's largest STEM fair for young people. And we do a lot of work. So this has evolved a lot over the years. And we now use those criteria for which schools can come. And the data we have from 2019, when we would just let anyone come along, it's amazing. Loads of hands-on, interactive, inspirational shows, careers, panels, and the opportunity to talk to role models, really important. That's what makes the biggest difference. But we used to just have a first-come, first-served registration, and when we look back at that data, about 35% of schools were these priority schools, and we now hold a certain percentage, so it's now, from the registration data, it was at 61%, and we had 29,000 young people registered. So it's a lot of people in those demographic groups that we're really properly reaching now. But it has to go with the inclusion. So actually, I'm very pleased that we're just nudging it up year on year. We're learning as we go. We have quiet zones for special educational needs schools and students with them. They have the sunflower lanyards, so they can be supported throughout the whole experience by all the volunteers. We train all the volunteers. We support the exhibitors with inclusive messaging. We talk with them about who they can bring on the stand if they possibly can, as diverse as possible. And just honestly, what you saw looking around the show floor last week was really something very special. And we had BSL signing, we had live captioning, but all of that, and they're going hand in hand. And I feel that we're making those inroads, and we use that kind of co-creation, iteration, evaluation approach to all the work that we're doing with young people, always trying to just drive the impact, particularly in those groups. And then we support that with research and analysis on current workforce, diversity, and the representation of different groups going up into the workforce through different educational pathways, and then advocacy as well. So trying to identify things that will make a difference, that might be a policy change. Yeah. It's kind of hard, actually, to think about, what could? But really trying to think about, okay, what are the limiters here that we could get a bit of change on? And the thing that I was going to say, in response to your question, which is a very long time ago now, I realise, but it's the sharing bit. Yes. So all of this, we really are very happy to share, and we have a community, the Tomorrow's Engineers Code community, where we have about 270 organisations, including IT, and I think OS Components are on there, WSP, definitely. And we make 4 pledges about improving the impact of us working together to increase the numbers and diversity of young people going into engineering. And that is about sharing what we're doing, and not best practice, what we're doing. We hope it's good, we want it to be better, constantly sharing. So anyone who wants to come on board, all of that's free to join. We have live events, webinars, resources, everything. Would welcome anyone.
Wow. Do you know what? I don't see why anybody would not just jump at that opportunity, because what you've shared there is the fact that you've empowered your team, you've empowered the people who work, within Engineering UK to see opportunities everywhere. You've empowered them, you've set yourselves measurable targets as well, which is brilliant, because when you can measure it, you chart your progress, you know what needs tweaking. And actually that is, with my engineering hat on, that's the equation that you need to be able to come to a solution that goes, actually, we're on our way to solving a problem here. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks for sharing. And if anybody who is connected on our audience online, please jump at that opportunity. There's data analytics in that as well. Lots of different opportunities. Nika, AFBE are doing some incredible work. And actually what, I'm so grateful for is the voice. You are a voice for people who don't have a voice. You've got a massive presence. You're not afraid as well to say things as they are. I wondered if you can share with us and the audience online what your aspirations are for world domination.
Well,
Not quite.
not quite.
Not quite that. But really for the next 5 years, 10 years, because it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And, I always get excited when Hillary's speaking because of the great work that Engineering UK, I'm not biased at all, I'm a trustee, I'm not biased, but the great work that Engineering UK is doing. So for AFBE, I think when we started AFBE in 2007, the stats weren't even particularly there. No one was measuring, no one knew particularly what the percentages were. We think it was about 4% that was people from ethnic minority backgrounds in engineering. Now we are at 9%, and that might sound good until you realize that 33% or so of the engineering students studying are from ethnic minority backgrounds. And you start to think about the gaps between those that are working in the industry and those that are studying, and start to think about that 9% is not necessarily even people that have studied engineering in the UK. So that 9% is a combination of everybody working from, studied from everywhere that is working. So for us, the aspiration is really, apart from understanding what's happening in terms of the recruitment of people from ethnic minority groups going into engineering, but also making sure that our industry is as inclusive as possible. Now, how do we make that happen? Last year, we launched something called the Engineering Ethnicity Index, which is a way of us measuring from our corporations what they are doing to make their workforce inclusive. It's one thing to say, yeah, we're a member of AFBE. It's another thing to tell us what you are doing, what the people in your company think about how inclusive you are, and that's the tricky bit. Because you can have all these shiny brochures and things that says, we're the best thing since sliced bread, or jollof rice, I like to say. But it means nothing when the people that work within the organization don't feel that way. And that's not just from an ethnicity perspective, it's from all sorts of kind of strands of diversity. So for us, the ambition really is to ensure that when we welcome people into our industry and when we go out to schools and tell young people that, you must be an engineer, they don't walk in on day one and think they've lied to me. They walk into a place that is inclusive. They walk into a place that's accepting. They walk into a place where they can have their afros as big as possible and not have a problem with it. They walk into a place where when they have their hair braided, they don't walk into a meeting, which has happened to me very often, and everyone's asking how many hours it took me to have my hair braided. They walk into a place that welcomes them as they are and values them for the expertise that they bring. So that's the ambition for us. Once we get to a place where our industry is inclusive, no doubt it will be diverse. Until then, we continue the fight.
Amazing. Whoa. Wow. When we get to a place where our industry is inclusive, then it will be diverse. And I think that's a call to action, actually, you know, in so many ways, for us really to strive for that. Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for that. That needs to be on a shirt. Like, I need to have that printed, exactly. Amazing. Thank you. Well, sorry, you're going to have to follow that, yeah. But I guess the backdrop for me is the work that RS Grassroots do is so impactful. There's a big, massive vision in a way that equips students with the skills, but also cements their sense of place. And I love that about you and your team. It brings together people who are from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and it's just such a beautiful thing to see. I'm going to stop there, yeah. But I wanted to hear really from you, and for anybody who is listening, actually, for them to be able to take some practical tips to say, we might be a small organization, we might be a big organization, but here are the things that we can do to be really vocal, visible, and I guess be agents of change, agents of progress.
Wow, thank you for the lead-in. I think it's important to say that RS Grassroots is a part of RS Group, a huge organisation, but we are very much like almost like a little startup in RS, and our whole remit is about empowering young engineers, but also showing the impact that engineering can have on society, on people, on the planet. So we are really intentional about how we do things, and I'm super lucky because my whole team are really strong believers in the whole diversity, equity and inclusion piece as well. So what we try to do with a lot of the students and the charities that we work with, because we also have social impact in our remit, is to make sure that we are working with as diverse a groups as possible. So from some of the initiatives that Amy over there runs with Sophie around women in engineering societies in universities, we do lots of work with lots of different societies that represent different characteristics of diversity and inclusion. Reflect is all about encouraging more ethnically diverse young people into the profession. Our social impact partner, the Washing Machine Project, I can't do this event without talking about the incredible work that they do. It's an engineering innovation that's improving the lives of women and children in refugee camps and developing countries around the world who have to hand wash clothes. A hand-cranked washing machine. I mean, it's so simple, but the power that that can have to improve people's lives. So it's things like that, you know, it's not just in the people that you work with, it's in the charities that you champion, it's in your sourcing partners that you work with for talent, it's, as Hilary so aptly touched on, it's in your whole employee life cycle, your policies, your processes, your procedures, your development programs. And so starting to try and influence some of that the other way round into the organisation, because we have the joy of working with Gen Z all day, every day. And organisations watching this, if you aren't on this, you are not ready for Gen Z. And so it is incredibly important to take their learnings and the things that they're super passionate about and bring it back into the company to make sure that the company is future fit to have those young people in it. So yeah, make sure that you're working with lots and lots and lots of different types of people, and I promise you it will pay off. It grows your knowledge, it grows your impact, and it's just a lovely thing to keep learning.
Yeah. I love the fact that every time I've messaged RS to say there's this really cool group of people that I think you should be connected to, it turns out RS is already connected to them.
We are prolific networkers. Your network is your net worth, right? We know that.
It's brilliant. It's like, oh yeah, we know them already. Amy sends me the email like, brilliant. Simon, you know, the great things about the IET is, you know, two great things actually. It represents a huge industry, you know, and so, you know, it's always I'd like to think, always in a position to influence huge numbers, right? Like to really, really achieve that impact by scale. But then also, there's the inner workings of the IET, right? There needs to be, I guess, that internal empowerment, that thing that is, you need to look after yourself so you can look after the rest of the world. And I wondered if you could maybe just share some of the things that are happening that ensure that the organization in itself is ready to be able to empower the rest of the world.
Yeah, of course. I think that this is really something, probably in the last 2 or 3 years, we've invested quite a lot of time in, because actually a big part of it is really normalizing EDI conversations and within an organization. And I would say, 5, 10 years ago, the IET, like many organizations, probably these weren't things that were talked about very much. There were things that you talked around outside of work with your friends and other people, but you probably didn't talk about them very much in the workplace. And I think that in itself is a massive barrier to really embedding these things fully in organizations. So, quite simple things really, but, we have a series of talks. We invite people in, and actually we've had some really powerful and interesting talks. We had one from AFBE around the history of racism. Over 200 staff tuned in to watch that and engaged with it. We've had ones on digital accessibility, a gentleman from the blind community showing us the challenges that he faces using his phone when stuff hasn't been coded properly. So all sorts of things like that, really. We also had one a couple of weeks ago around male mental health and male suicide. And, what you find is that by having these sorts of talks and conversations internally, the organization talks about it for weeks afterwards, and every meeting you go in, people are talking about it. It then becomes something which is just part of the sorts of things that we're talking about. And I think that's really helped us move EDI from being, like you were saying, a centralized thing to something which then starts to go out wider and the organization can own. I think also we're very lucky in that we have some really good member networks which help us in our volunteer network, which help advise us. And internally with our staff colleagues, we had an EDI committee for about 5 years, but we now have, as well as that, we have an LGBTQ plus staff network, we have a race and culture staff network, we have a disability inclusion network. And so I think, again, those are really important in ensuring people have a safe space and peer-to-peer support. But also, we get really, really useful information from those groups. How are we showing up? Simple things as well. We have an anonymous EDI feedback tool, which anybody can give anonymously any feedback on the experience that they've had in the organization or something that they've observed. And we take that stuff really quite seriously, and sometimes, again, it can be uncomfortable to kind of have these conversations, but we have them. And I think that whole piece has really allowed us to kind of move forward, I would say. The other thing which we're spending quite a bit of time doing and really focusing in on is neurodiversity within STEM and within the STEM space. And we have a neurodiversity member network which kind of allows engineers who identify as neurodiverse to, again, network and have that peer-to-peer support, but again, tell us, feed into what we should be doing as an organisation. And we've just finished quite a large research project around neurodiversity in engineering, and we've gone quite deep into trying to understand the lived experiences of people who identify as neurodiverse in this space, and actually, how are they experiencing things? Well, and again, if we don't ask these questions, then we're not going to know what to do about it, essentially. So that's been really interesting, and off the back of that, we've now got a neurodiversity advisory group, which is chaired by Andy Parker from Rolls-Royce. So there's lots going on there, but I think a lot of it comes down to normalizing EDI conversations within the organization. I never hear anybody really saying, we're doing too much. What I hear is people say, after these talks, we need to be doing more. We want to do more. And I think that's a good place to be in to move forward, I guess.
Yeah. Well, lots of positive action there. We've actually got a video with the chair of the Neurodiversity Member Network showing up next with Andy Parker.
Embracing neurodiversity in a workspace is vitally important in the 21st century. It's a question about acceleration and acceleration towards your goals. By having different viewpoints and different thought processes, you will reach your goals by looking at different areas, and you'll be able to achieve the innovation that we so sorely need quicker, and you'll have a better result. One thing that I'm doing is I'm telling my story about a late diagnosis of being autistic. It's vital that people who are in a safe space do that for those who aren't in a safe space to talk about their own diagnosis, but also to promote neurodiversity to the early careers and the other organisations around the world. The next thing I'm doing is that despite having an engineering background and being a chartered engineer with the IET, I've actually moved into an HR role. So the things that I truly believe in and the differences that I can make as a neurodivergent individual, I'm now able to do professionally within the organisation. So if any of you wish to make the change, you can looking at the different functions around your organisation to truly accelerate the change that you wish to need. So the first tip that I would say is act like that diverse organisation that you aspire to be. This is not a case of wait for diverse talent to come and then make changes. The changes need to be made in advance to attract that diverse workforce to come and work for you. The next thing that I say is look at how you market yourself. You may be a brilliantly diverse organisation already, but if your literature, your posters, your images, and the way that you talk about yourself is very traditional and has hangovers from the past, you still may not be attracting or holding on to the talent that you have. And the third thing that I would say is don't be afraid to look at the edges. Don't be afraid to look at the minority groups that you wish to attract. They all have talents, they all have specific traits of which you can go after. And it's okay to go after one first and go after another second and go after another third, because the benefits for each will overlap. It can be quite daunting to go into this world of diversity of which we talk, but you can go after one and then another and then another, and I guarantee you all will see the benefit as you go on this journey.
That was fantastic, yeah. Lots of really good advice in there. So I was just thinking actually, when it comes to promoting inclusion, I feel like the things that really stick in people's minds are the things that they can quite readily start to implement within their organizations or even in their day-to-day lives. And the IET is currently running an inclusive thinking campaign and trying to really just pick people's brains from all over the world to be able to say, actually, what is that great one thing that you are doing in your organization that could be helpful to somebody in a similar situation, in a similar business size, going on a similar journey. The one thing that really excites me is the fact that our workplaces are evolving. And I think it's such a great opportunity. People are really starting to think about how you come to work and how you're able to be psychologically safe at work, the spaces that you exist in, making sure they are as beautiful as Future's place, plug. But also to ensure that we can create spaces for the next generation of people to want to be part of. I wondered if you could maybe share a few tips on just practical ways to ensure that your workplace is more inclusive. Just something really tiny that people can take away. Hilary.
So it's a very small one, and we're just bringing it in, but we did some disability awareness training, and we were thinking about things that we could change as a consequence of that, and we're changing the wording about our accessibility question from, do you have any accessibility needs, to what accessibility needs do you have? And we just felt actually that might just encourage, it's just that tiny nudge further to say it's fine to share. And we're also, from the learning from that training, embedding it into our annual performance cycle. So actually there's now a question about what accessibility needs do you have, so not presuming that, that people are static in the needs that they have, or also may not have felt as comfortable about disclosing where they might need more support. So they're kind of just new things we're bringing in, but actually on the back of that, I would add in, we do a lot of in-house training. So we bring in outside experts for training to make sure that what our aspirations are for the work we do outside in terms of, you know, future workforce young people is mirrored effectively with what we're doing inside. And it is really important. And when we at Engineering UK first started on this journey, I was surprised how much weight that side needed to really feel like we were effectively making progress. So do, you know, put the effort in and actually just keep training. I think we've now, you know, agreed the amount of training that we'll be doing, the way in which it will cycle around, and just things change so fast and our workforce changes so fast, but also those training situations are really great sharing, team building moments, because people often, you know, bring their own reflections and responses and emotions into those conversations. And I think you were saying earlier, you talk about them, you know, you talk about them a lot afterwards. And so we carve out a lot of time for them, and I think it makes a difference.
Do you know what? I was really moved by what you just shared, and that's because our needs are constantly changing. Yeah. The fact that, you know, it was something 5 years ago, and I wrote it on a piece of paper doesn't mean it is what, it's the same thing now. And really creating a space that allows me just share whatever it is at that point in time that you're asking. It's so liberating, actually. Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Nikki, I wonder if you had any practical tips.
There's two things. The first one is get out of your bubble. Make a map of who you are. Put yourself at the center. I do this a lot. Put myself at the center. What's my circle of influence? If your circle of influence all look like you, sound like you, have the same experience as you need to get out of your bubble and find new experiences. It will enrich your life. It will make you a person with better empathy, and, you know, it will just help you improve yourself. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I hate to say, if Ollie's watching, he'll probably laugh, is read books. He is a prolific reader. I mean, he reads so many books. There's so many books out there that you can read. If you don't like to read, if you're like me, you don't like to read, Audible was created for people like me. Reading is really important. Read about other people's experiences. There's so many books out there that you can learn so much from. If you don't want to read on your own, join a book club. Well, WSP, for example, has a really good book club, and they read different books on different strands of diversity, and we learn so much. So that's another way. So get out of your bubble and read a book.
Fantastic, I like that. I like the Audible thing as well, yeah, it makes sense, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Isabella?
I'm going to build on something Nikkei said, actually, because I'm a big believer in reading and educating yourself. But getting into the world of intersectionality is so important to the whole EDI conversation, because lots of organisations will look at a specific pillar of diversity or a specific characteristic and don't understand that there are other pillars that intersect with that. So as an example, a black neurodiverse female, if a program that's designed to develop women ain't going to work for her. She has a whole bunch of other issues going on that need to be addressed separately and through targeted initiatives. So I think that that's a massive one that you can really make a huge difference in your efforts in ED&I. And the other thing is actually what Hilary said, there's some tiny things that you can think about on a microcosm of your day-to-day at work. So our team are great, right? We tend to think when we organise external events, we always think about people's dietary requirements. We always check with attendees, what are your dietary requirements? Why don't we do that internally as often? So we have a little team get together after work or something, and when we're picking where to go and eat, we'll ask, we'll make sure that everybody can eat something there. When we do team away days and things, we don't make sure that the social is centred around alcohol, because we have a few people in our team who don't drink. So it's leaving little things like that you can make a difference just to your immediate circles at work that then create that more inclusive environment.
Yeah. I love that because it gives everybody such a rich experience as well. Like the deeper you delve, like the richer those bonds are, and it can only be good for business.
Getting to know your people as people, not as employees, and understanding what goes on in their lives, what they believe in, what they enjoy doing. That's when you can really start to build a super inclusive environment, because you're catering to those needs that you know so intimately.
Yeah. Powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Simon, any practical tips?
I think, I guess one of the things that I think sometimes and our chief executive, Ed, sometimes says this, is that as a leader sometimes, oh, he's over there. Better say it right then. Is that, as a leader, sometimes what you need to do is just kind of get out of the way of talented people. So it's about thinking about, do I really need to be in this? Because as a senior person, again, people are probably going to look to you for your voice. So can somebody else kind of lead this thing and I can take a back seat? When can I sit out and kind of provide other people with those opportunities? So I think that's an important one. I guess also, sometimes when you're in an organisation, it's quite hard to really see how you are perceived outside that organisation. And so I think it's really important that any organisation, you can just take the time, and it doesn't have to cost a lot, but just to ask people, your members, your customers, how are we showing up? How do you perceive us? How do we come across? And you can do it in kind of clever ways in terms of, bring along an item that reminds you of us, or if we were a person or a celebrity, who do we remind you of? And you may be terrified by the answers, but or you may be pleasantly surprised. But if that is a disconnect to who you think you are as an organisation and to kind of how you are being and the work you are doing, then you know that you kind of need to address that. I think probably the last thing I'll say as well is that there are many engineering companies all around the UK and around the world, actually, where if you look at the outside of them, anything could be going on behind those walls. And I think it's really important to kind of actually show your community that you exist, because actually if you can't see that there's something going in there, well then how are you going to necessarily aspire to be there? I heard a story of a primary school who was, I think, pretty much next door to a really interesting space engineering company, but had no idea they were there. So it's just simple things. Get a banner out the front, make sure you're showing diverse audiences, diverse people inside your premises, and show people in your community that you are there. And I think those things can really, hopefully, make a little bit of a difference.
I love that. Just open yourself up to the world. Don't be afraid to receive feedback.
Yeah.
It just comes with the intention, right? Fantastic. Some really great tips there. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to interject to say that's a really good point. So I used to work in a company in Croydon. A lot of people don't realize how many engineering companies actually have offices in Croydon. Now, if you go to the kids who are, they're grown up now. The kids I used to mentor in Croydon, when I tell them this, they're quite surprised because I had no idea. So yeah, that's a really important point I just wanted to say. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Right, so for all of our audience and anybody online, another big top tip for you today is just open up your organizations to your community, to your country, to the world. Thank you so much for sharing that. We will be offering you a chance to ask questions to our panel. You can do so in the chat on YouTube or by scanning the QR code, which should hopefully be on your screen right now. But before we go to the panel, we are going to hear from Chief Information Security Officer at WithSecure, Christine Bayerasco, on the importance of diversity in leadership and what she's doing to promote it.
leaders are in charge of hiring new people into the organization, as well as putting people into leadership positions as well. And this is why having leaders that are diverse enables them within the organization to actually perpetuate a culture of equity, a culture of fairness and being equitable across the organization. But also they can perpetuate a culture of a vicious cycle of unfairness if we don't have leaders that are coming from diverse backgrounds. And so this is why having this diversity across leadership enables them to have checks and balances across each other so that they can remove unconscious biases among them. So personally, when I hire people, especially for junior positions in the workplace, I try to have it as less biased as possible. So to begin with, there's very little filters that's happening. It's only the budgets of the organization that is hiring for it. And then the applicants are given the exercises. And then there's a panel, different types of people who check the exercises, but these exercises are then anonymous. So they don't know who's submitting them, and it's only the skill of the applicant that is really being checked. And after that happens, then only those applicants who actually have the right kind of skills, they are the ones now who make it to the shortlist for the interviews. So up until the interviews, anyone is able, just by their skill alone, to submit these applications. And this is also what I train people, especially in my previous role when I was leading managers, to perform in their work so that it is less biased when it comes to the application process. And additionally, I also mentor women in the workplace, those who want to advance in their careers, as well as even those who just want to spar related to certain ideas that they may have and they want to polish their ideas further. And finally, I try to be visible in public presentations externally, so that if there are women who want to go into the cybersecurity industry and they would like to have some role models, then perhaps I can also help in that space. Well, I'm a big fan of Daniel Pink's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So firstly, the organization would need to attract, to show people that they can actually offer them mastery so they can develop in their craft continuously, and then give them purpose, that what they are doing is bigger than themselves, that they can actually do this not just for the organization, but also for society in general. So that can be very attractive. And then keeping them within work, autonomy would be really important, because people nowadays, especially with creative work, they value the flexibility when it comes to what time they are more creative, what time they are more productive when it comes to doing their work, and where they can perform their work. So if an organization is able to give employees this mastery, purpose, and give them autonomy to do their work, then they might be able to keep these employees for quite a while.
Oh, that was so powerful. I really like that. Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much, Christine, for that. Well, we've had some questions come through. Please feel free to send us more questions on YouTube, in the chat function on YouTube, and also via the QR code. There's one here which I find really interesting, and I'm just going to read it, and if any of our panelists wants to jump on it, please just feel free to. I have heard the term diversity dishonesty. What does this mean to you?
I'm going to explode. I need to say something.
Okay, yes,
So, it's a really interesting phrase, and one that I think is picking up in popularity. My understanding of it is that it's when an organisation thinks or likes to convince themselves that they're doing a lot better at ED&I than they really are. And again, it comes back to that fear of feedback, fear of we're not doing well enough. And it can manifest in ways like, you know, your external, how you promote yourself to the world looks really diverse. And then you attract diverse people and they come in and find a completely different environment. And that's counterproductive, right? Because if you bring those people in and they don't then feel included, they're going again. So you have to think about it from the whole attraction, retention, development, promotion kind of way. And so, yeah, I think any organisation that's doing perhaps the diversity but not the inclusion part or the equity part, that to me is where that phrase diversity dishonesty comes up.
Fantastic. fantastic. So it needs to work hand in hand with all three parts pretty much, exactly. Great, fantastic.
I'd like to, I made up a term recently, which is inclusion lip syncing. So, which is similar to diversity dishonesty. It's when organizations act like they want change, but as soon as it's a little bit uncomfortable, they backtrack. As soon as it challenges them, they backtrack, and that's happening an awful lot. Now, I give a lot of presentations in organizations, and I'm always quite skeptical when an organization wants to censor what you present. Obviously, there's a need for them to know what you're going to be telling their staff. You can't just go and tell their staff whatever. But there is sometimes kind of constraining of the message that means that what gets heard by their staff is very limited to what they want their staff to know about. And that means their staff don't have a safe environment to talk about issues that actually affect them at work. So I think that kind of is a subset of diversity dishonesty.
And definitely things to avoid.
I think there's a really interesting extra bit, which is why that's happening. So the dishonesty, to me, suggests, you know, an act of deception. And is it really that, or is it people who are kind of on board with the need for diversity and just have not, so it's have not understood the balance with inclusion. So I think actually looking a little bit deeper and trying to understand what's driving it, I mean, if it's a genuine deception, that ain't great. You really just need to be very clear about how unacceptable that is. But actually, if it is around a need for a deeper understanding and a deeper commitment to, yeah, this is hard. And it's not a one fix, and it's not a single journey you'll go on, and who knows where it ends. But actually, you know, trying to make the case for the commitment that doesn't lead to that, because I can see that there will be organisations that look like that's what they're doing, and actually are well-intentioned, but haven't got the knowledge and haven't been able to allocate the resource to really understand how to progress.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, thank you. There's another question here which I find, you know, really interesting, because I think it's the right type of question that organizations need to be asking themselves. How do organizations move from performative EDI to something meaningful and impactful? And that's because, you know, EDI can be a bit of a show, right? You know what I mean? And sometimes you want it to be more than a show. You want it to be a tree with roots and, you know, really part of the everyday. But then sometimes you start with the show and then you go, actually, yes. But then I wondered if you had any thoughts on how they make that transition. And I think you've touched on it, actually, you know, ensuring that you've got the resources to, you know, ensuring that you are creating a space for that psychological safety for people to actually say, you know what, it doesn't really work. But any other thoughts would be most welcome.
I guess for me, it's about that moment where you can move EDI from something which is a wholly centralized thing, which 2 or 3 people own, into something which is truly embedded. And that can be quite hard to do, but you need to equip the organization and people in the organization with the tools to make that happen. So, you know, I think a lot of people are quite scared of doing or saying the wrong things. So you need to give people the tools to help them work out that stuff. So, you know, we have inclusive evangelism guides, we update them every 3 months or so, we do training sessions and all those sorts of things. And they kind of think about, well, what are the barriers to that happening in your organization? Because until everybody can kind of be comfortable with what their part is and have the tools, you're not going to make that transition. So that's how I would see it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I think, and this might be slightly dangerous thinking for some people, but I think actually, if you really want to make a difference in this space, you have to put not what's best for the company on a back burner, but what's best for your people on the front burner. actually listening to what your people want and are saying. So, you know, as a great example, at RS we're super lucky. We have some incredible employee resource groups. So we have one around gender, we have one around youth, we have one around race inclusion, we have one around LGBT+. And those people, they're driven in a different way, right? They're working their day jobs, but they're also doing all this stuff off the side of their desk to make the organisation a more inclusive place. Trusting those people who have the organisation's interests at their heart of things is why they're doing what they're doing. And we often look at these conversations of, well, what's best for the company? Those people, through what they're doing, are automatically thinking of what is best for the company, but they're also centering the needs of those communities through their intense knowledge and experience of having been a part of that community. So, yeah, I think, it's about not necessarily doing it as a company approach, but doing it as an authentic approach. Reflect 2019, I'm sorry, but that was, to me, a perfect example of that. It was a crazy little idea that our team had in 2019 that let's get a bunch of black and brown kids together and show them some incredible role models. And we totally put the company brand and all of that stuff on the back seat. A bit naughty, I know. But the vibes at that event, we brought it to what the kids wanted to see from us. And that's why I think we're here like in its 5th year, with all sorts of organisations having been a part of it, because it's that authenticity again. And it's still got RS branded all over it, but it's got the look and feel of what the community want from us. Yeah. And I think that's really important when you're dealing with D&I, is thinking about the communities that you're looking to serve through those initiatives.
That's amazing, absolutely amazing. And like the focus on being authentic, I think when you're real, when you're legit, you go much further. You go much further.
Can I add something in?
Yes, please.
I wouldn't want to put smaller organisations off.
Yeah.
Because, you can put a lot of effort into this, and if you're an SME and a small SME, it can be hard to get to where you need to go and make it feel that it's a proportionate amount of effort. And I feel that we were very lucky that we were able to do that, and our trustees supported us because it was so close to our mission. But I can imagine small organisations thinking, to do this well, it feels like a lot of effort. And I would just say to them to really look for the shortcuts that they can take, learning from others, find an organisation like you who can just give you some faster tips, and use, the formal organisations that are there to offer support. And the Academy does an awful lot in this space. I think IET probably supports, we also use ENEI, but, there are loads of organisations. So if you've got the resource to do it all from scratch in a way that is bespoke to the needs of your specific organisation and people, then that's fabulous. But actually, if you don't do nothing.
Yeah. That's great advice, actually, because there's always the temptation to go, actually, we're going to do it the way that we've heard others do it. But what you're saying is reach out, ask for help as well, build based on some of the great work that has been done as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'll just keep an eye on the time, actually, because I feel like we can... No, this is not you. This is all down to me. Because I feel like we can be speaking on this for a very long time. Right, so we've got one from YouTube. John Heath, thank you very much for your question. Very quickly, so what do the panelists recommend or do in the organizations with regards to allocating budget to EDI training? Is there a recommended percentage? Are there low-cost techniques and routes you recommend to? I guess building on what you said, look for help as well, look for where there's free resource. But I wondered if you can relate to this.
As you know, AFBE is not a large organisation, and we kind of bootstrapped AFBE for the first 10 years of starting, so I can completely empathise with organisations and deciding what budget is. But I always say, do you have a budget for safety? If you see EDI as part of safety, then the budget should, whatever percentage you're allocating, and safety is big in engineering, so whatever budget you're allocating for safety should include costs for EDI. And that way you can kind of balance what your cost is on EDI. What I find is that a lot of organizations often think that EDI should be free. And the whole, if you go on LinkedIn and a lot of D&I specialists and listen to them, it's the pain. I read the pieces and the pain in them being asked constantly to do things for free, when you would happily pay a safety consultant to do a course on, of safety. So I think that for the percentage, I think it really should be as part of what your safety budget, what have you allowed for your safety budget, and EDI should be included. That's a good guide for where your budget.
Oh gosh, fantastic, absolutely super.
No, you go.
What I was going to say, I totally recognise it can be really hard for smaller organisations to find budget or to allocate budget to this. So I think it's worth considering, well, who else in your local area? What other businesses? They don't have to be in this space, but actually many other organisations would value hearing kind of diverse speakers, diverse voices, training, those sorts of things. So actually, think about, well, what other 2 or 3 organisations could I partner up with for this training? And if you are a larger organisation, then actually, well, do you have capacity to invite a smaller organisation in to kind of partake? So I guess you don't have to do it on your own. Think within your local area, I guess, and make the budget go far.
I think there's a lot you could do with your recruitment budget as well. So one of the videos talked about, actually, we've just changed to one of the bias stripping recruitment platforms. We love it. The applicants are telling us they love it. Actually, I suspect it's a cost saving in terms of the staff time we've taken out of the process, because we're getting fewer but very high quality applicants. So, if you improve your retention because of your efforts and your inclusion spend, so, don't take the shortcuts. Actually, you can really reap a lot of benefits and actually create savings, but you may need to put a little in up front.
Yeah, fantastic, great, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Safety, collaboration, as well as recruitment and well-being, exactly. Yeah. Great, okay, so thanks for your questions. A big thank you to our panelists, my friends. If you'd like to get involved and share your inclusion tips, this quick message from the IET's Chief Executive, Ed Almond, will show you how.
As you know, IET is really committed to inclusivity. So we want you to share your hints, tips and hacks to support inclusivity in our workplace and with our colleagues. There's a link on the screen, just look that up, and please share your thoughts with us. Thank you.
I'm just going to say another big, massive thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to sit with you this afternoon and just hear all your amazing pearls of wisdom. I have to say a big, massive thank you as well for all you do. You do it on a daily basis, everywhere you are. So thank you so much. I am at this point going to remind you and our audience online that this is a Reflect event, and it's part of the Reflect Youth event. Now, the Reflect National Day will take place on the 1st of August 2023. So again, that's the 1st of August 2023. More information can be found on the screen. Please join us. It's been literally 4 or 5 years running, 5th birthday exactly, and it's such a powerful statement for equity, diversity, and inclusion. There are also opportunities for you to get involved, for you to also support the work that is happening through the Reflect platform. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. My name is Yoandi Akinola. Thank you.